Hello and welcome to the news on Star TV. I am Sarah Kamara. In our headlines tonight, plastic recycling gains momentum. Thousands storm Serekunda market as they prepare for Korite. Former mayoral aspirant Panjai Grigara wants Gambians to forget about 3 years coalition agreement. And on the international scene, Ethiopia cautioned over forced return of displaced persons. Historic Africa Free Trade Zone comes into force. South Africa joins Ethiopia, Rwanda in small club of gender parity cabinet. Those are our top stories this hour, and now the news in depth. At a time when the world is threatened with plastic and other environmental hazards, plastic recycling seems to be gaining momentum in the Gambia. Star TV visited the Plastic Recycling Company Limited at Sinchu, where the accountant director explained how the new company is gaining momentum after its establishment in 2017. More on this report with Maimuna Juve.
The company's accountant, Mr. Usinu Sow, said the company is gaining momentum compared to the time it was newly established. Under the support of a company in the Netherlands, the company's objective is to reduce the repercussions of plastics in our environment. They also hope to create a total of over 100 jobs in 2020. So hopes that in years to come, the company will be able to produce its own end product rather than exporting the raw material to the Netherlands and other parts of the world. The Human Resource Manager, Yoro Esau, said the machine can produce more than 1,000 tons per day, depending on the electricity situation. The company has hopes in almost all the dumping stations in all the regions in the Gambia, where they can collect these plastics for production. Mr. Sow added that the company has a memorandum of understanding with Gambega Limited, which is supplying the recycling company with their oil rigs. Maimuna Juve, Star TV News.
That was Maimuna Juve reporting. Gambia's biggest and busiest market, Serekunda, has started to receive thousands of people in anticipation of the Muslim festive of Korite. While business seems to be working for street vendors, shop owners are not really happy on how they block entrance to their shops and selling at cheaper prices. Our reporter Dauro Cham visited the Serekunda market and files in this report.
Omar Sar, a shopkeeper selling clothes, said the business is not going well this year compared to the previous years. He said vendors on the road selling at cheaper prices are the reason for the dullness of their business. He added that this is not fair to them because they pay a higher rate of tax and rent. Mr. Sar urged the government to find a way to solve this problem for them. Abamboch, a vendor around the road, said business is going well. She added that they decided to come outside due to lack of place to sell their stuffs. She noted that they know it's not fair to the shopkeepers because they are paying tax and rent, but they cannot afford to lose their money because they also go to Senegal to buy their stuffs and then resell them. Mrs. Mboch also highlighted that if they are provided with a place, they will not come out. She urged the police to provide them a place where they can sell their stuffs. I am Dado Cham reporting for Star TV News.
That was our reporter Dado Cham. The conversation on the 3 years agreement continues in the Gambia as veteran politicians share their stands. Dauda Njai, commonly known as Panjai Grigara, former mayor candidate for KMC, has said that Gambians should forget about anything that has to do with the so-called 3 years coalition agreement. More on that story with Ajakadi Sanyang.
The former GDC mayoral aspirant who lost to Talib Bensouda believes Gambians should concentrate on how to work together in order to better this country. Njai argued that the 3 years is only a gentleman agreement, that it is not something binding in any court of law. So to him, whether it was signed or not, it is not compulsory for anyone to fulfill. Panjai also took a dig at the United Democratic Party, saying if they supported Barrow to rule for 5 years when they were in the same line, he sees no reason why they should change their minds now that things have gone sour between them. He quickly added that, though the leader of the UDP, Dabo, has not asked Barrow to resign at the end of the 3 years, his party militants are doing the exact opposite. However, Njai believes the UDP is a very responsible party and that they won't be engaged in doing something unlawful, Njai also advised that those threatening to riot in December just to make sure Barrow steps down to reconsider. He said if Gambians were patient enough to allow Yaya Jammeh rule for 22 years, then 5 years should not be a big deal. Panjai also advised the GDC and APRC not to be engaged in this 3 years coalition agreement since both of them were not part of the parties that formed the coalition 2016. He wants the GDC to rise above the noise and not be engaged in this 3 years Jotna issue. Ajakadi Sanyang, Star TV News.
That was Ajakadi Sanyang reporting. Moving on to sports, Patrick Silva's inspiring hat-trick guides Fortune FC to a 3-0 molding of Talinding United FC at the Independence Stadium yesterday in the Gambia Football Federation Division 1 League. Jacqueline Colley sends us this report.
Talinding United, who needed a single point to maintain their status in the Gambian Top Flight League next season, felt behind in their 17 minutes of the encounter when their goalkeeper Alaji Kamara brought down Mohamed Sambu inside his own box. Patrick stepped up and calmly slot in the resulting spot kick to give the Praetorian boys an early lead. Buvazon boys Talinding United were left sweating when their defender Fode Senkan was sent off for a deliberate elbow on Fortune's Mohamed Sambu in the 24th minute. Fortune pushed for more goals but couldn't add to the tally as both teams head to the locker room with only a single goal to show off in the first half. Talinding United was hoping for at least a point from the interval, playing quick counter-attack on the opponent's half, only to leave their defense line wide open. Fortune fired back quickly through the midfield channel into the path of Basiru Manga, who squared a through ball into the path of Patrick in an open space. Inside the box he controlled beautifully from close range and tapped in a second for himself and Fortune in the night. Patrick caps off his hat-trick from the spot kick, his second of the match, and Fortune's third goal when Musa Fofana, a second-half entrance for Talinding United, stumbled Basiru Manga of Fortune inside his own box in the 90 plus 3 minutes additional time. Jacqueline Colley reporting for Star TV News.
And now moving on to the internationals. Two groups have cautioned the Ethiopian government against what they say are forced return of internally displaced people to unsafe homelands in parts of the country. The Crisis Group and Human Rights Watch have voiced concern after the latest round of returns, which have been put at over 1 million and which the government has justified. Rest of the story with Africa News.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister on Thursday pursued a plan to return displaced people to their homes following ethnic violence. Earlier this month, the government announced it was scaling up its plans to return displaced people to their homes as soon as possible, a message Abiy reinforced on Thursday. The upbeat message contrasts with the views of aid groups and experts who say many of the displaced people are terrified by the prospect of returning to their homes now, before the cause of the violence along ethnic lines have been resolved. With 3 million internally displaced people, Ethiopia is going through one of the most severe and underreported humanitarian crises in the world. Abiy Ahmed, who took office in April 2018, has won international plaudits for announcing bold reform pledges, but the blossoming of political freedoms over the past year has been accompanied by a surge in ethnic violence.
The historic African Free Trade Zone came into force on Thursday as the African Union celebrated making one more step towards creating a continent-wide market of 1.2 billion people worth $2.5 trillion US. This is a historic milestone, tweeted Albert Muchanga, AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry. More on the story with Africa News.
The African Continental Free Trade Area, an agreement meant to forge closer economic and trade ties among its African countries, came into force on Thursday. The pact, dubbed a historic milestone, aims to spur intra-African trade by getting rid of barriers and tariffs. Once passed by all 55 nations recognized as part of the African Union, it would cover a market of 1.2 billion people with a combined gross domestic product of $2.5 trillion. Once in full operation, it is expected to increase intra-African trade by 60% by 2022. At present, the figure stands at only 16%. 52 out of 55 countries in the AU bloc have signed the agreement since March 2018. Analysts say the deal would help the continent move away from mainly exporting commodities to building manufacturing capacity and industrialize. The launch of the pact's operational phase is expected on 7th July in the Nigerian capital Niamey. This will include finalizing its arbitration mechanisms, defining rules of origin for goods and mechanisms to fight corruption and poor infrastructure. 22 nations, including South Africa, have ratified the text, the next step after signing. Analysts add that the deal would help Africa reduce its infrastructure gap by building roads and railways.
Not so good news for users of marijuana. Google on Wednesday banned apps in its App Store that facilitate the sale of marijuana or related products. It's part of a change to its content policy, the company says. A Google spokesman told Reuters developers only need to move their shopping carts option outside the app to comply. More details from Africa News.
Google on Wednesday banned apps on its App Store that facilitate sale of marijuana or related products. It is part of a change to its content policy, the company says. A Google spokesman told Reuters developers only need to move their shopping cart option outside the app to comply. The tech firm said it's working with many of them to answer technical questions and help them bring in the changes without disrupting customers. 16 apps have 30 days post-launch to obey. Many other countries around the world are just approving medical marijuana. Wednesday's news was hardly celebrated by those in the business.
And finally, South Africa's cabinet, announced on Wednesday, became the third on the African continent that has an equal number of female and male ministers. Ramaphosa, who hailed the cabinet for making history as the first gender parity cabinet in the country's history, joins Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed and Rwanda's Paul Kagame, who have taken similar action. Rest of the story with Africa News.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on Wednesday retained David Mabuza as Vice President and Tito Mboweni as Finance Minister for Fiscal Stability. Ramaphosa, who was sworn in as South Africa's President, kept his promise of trimming the cabinet from 36 ministers to 28.
All South Africans are acutely aware of the great economic difficulties that our country is going through right now. But they are also aware of the constraints that have been placed on our public finances. It is therefore imperative that in all areas and spheres of government, we place priority on revitalizing our economy, while at the same time exercising great care in the use of public funds.
The President also appointed 50% women in the new cabinet, making South Africa one of the world's few gender-balanced governments.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending.
That's all we have for you in this edition of the news. Join us for more inside stories on Monday. Good night.